Welcome. I'm Zygmunt Kazicki, and this is another special program about gun safety. I'd like to introduce two people who are certified in the Be Smart program, and Cindy Chadwick and her husband Bob Chadwick are going to share some information from their experience about what people should know when it comes to dealing with firearms and gun safety. Thank you. Cindy, how could you instruct us about what you know?
Well, first let me tell you that I became involved with Mom's Demand Action about a year ago. I was asked if I wanted to come to a meeting, and that one meeting told me everything I needed to know, because I've had a deep concern about gun violence in this country, especially the children and the teens that are killed every day.
And you're a gun owner?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Both Bob and I shot competitive trap for 20 years.
Okay.
So we know what it's like to own a gun. Mm-hmm. And we come from a background, I'm not a mom, but I come from a background of being around guns and being a gun owner. And being a responsible gun owner isn't always as easy as people think it is.
And I should probably let people know I'm a gun owner too.
Okay?
Okay.
Good.
So Bob, what would you like to share with us?
Well, yeah, I'm Bob Chadwick. I'm a gun owner. I've hunted all around Michigan since I was a little kid.
Yep.
So I've been around guns for years. As Cindy said, we're both avid trap shooters. In fact, I'm the past president of the Michigan Trap Shooting Association. And I've probably shot at least 100,000 rounds over the years. So I know a lot about guns. I've got a lot of experience with it. And I also know what it takes to be a responsible gun owner. And it takes a lot of time. And that's really the message that we're here to give today, is that gun safety, particularly if you have children, is of paramount importance. And sometimes we have unfortunate accidents. Today I'll be sharing a few stories of some of these things. And let me start with Alexis Mercer. Alexis was 3 years old, kind of a cute, chubby, vivacious young lady, lived with her parents and two siblings in Louisiana. And one day, Alexis and her mom and siblings went to the store. And while they were gone, Dad decided to clean his firearms. And he was at the kitchen table, and he lost track of time, and he ran out to get to work on time. And a short time later, Alexis and her mom and her siblings came home, and the 3-year-old did what any 3-year-old would do: saw something on the table, ran to the table, picked up one of the guns, and died moments later. And I think it's pretty obvious to say that had Dad had time to secure those weapons, little Alexis would be here today.
Yeah.
That's one of the main reasons that Mom's Demand Action for Gun Sense in America put together the Be Smart program. We want to bring together parents and any adult that's concerned about gun safety and guns around children. And we know that this is an emotional issue. People here today may have very different opinions on guns, but we're going to put politics aside. We are going to assume that there are guns present, and we want to be able to tell people what they can do to maximize the safety of everyone. And our focus is pretty much on children or individuals that don't have the capacity to make that good judgment by themselves. What we want to do in the Be Smart program is to make 3 very important points. The first one is that we want all kids to grow up healthy and happy. The second is that every parent has the right to decide whether or not they have a gun in the home and whether they feel that is necessary to protect their family. And the third point is that if we can prevent just one child death from people watching this program, then we've made progress.
Sure. Now, the second point is a real interesting one. It hit me that you want people to stop and think whether they really need a gun.
We do.
Okay.
We do. And some people live in situations where maybe they really do need a
Okay.
gun. And others should think very carefully about it because a gun is a very dangerous item.
Yeah. Bob?
I think that, along that line, it's many people talk about, well, I need a gun for protection. I've never needed a gun for protection. But I have guns because I enjoyed hunting.
Yeah.
I enjoyed clay target shooting.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our reasons, but if we're going to have a gun, we need to be very practice good safety and good judgment with that weapon.
Yeah.
And we also think that mass shootings like Columbine and Sandy Hook, and even shootings that you've read about in the paper probably today or in the last week, are terrifying, and they can make us feel helpless. The problem is too big, we can't solve it. But the fact is that every individual has the power to make a difference. And we want to tell you today the concrete steps that people can take to make it safer to be around guns.
Okay.
One statistic that I find particularly alarming is that American kids are 11 times more likely to die from gun violence than children in other developed countries, and that is astounding.
Yeah.
That here in the United States, each year an average of 1,300 children ages 17 and under die by gun violence. We'll be honest with you. The solutions that we're going to talk about today aren't going to prevent all of those killings.
Sure.
They won't prevent all of those killings or injuries. But we have the responsibility to save more lives, and we think we can do it.
Well, just the fact that we're 11 times more at risk than other developed countries says something.
It does. It does.
I mean, that's something that, as a researcher and epidemiologist, I would say is a epidemic.
I think it would be accurate to call it that.
Yeah.
It really would. And Bob, you have some headlines that are kind of terrifying.
I see headlines every day, and I know we can't prevent them all. Some of the headlines that I've seen are, boy 13 commits suicide in Michigan school. 5-year-old shoots 6-year-old brother with a gun. 2-year-old dies after accidentally shooting himself in the head. And it goes on and on and on. And while we can't prevent all these type of headlines, we can make an impact. What disturbs me is not only the 1,300 gun deaths that we have each year, but of that number, nearly 100 were unintentional shootings. Okay? Over 400 are suicides. And we're just talking kids here. In many of the shootings, even some homicides, could have been prevented if we had had sensible gun safety practiced.
You hit on something that I found very interesting when I was looking at deaths attributed to guns. Most of the deaths are suicides. That many people kill themselves because they have a gun available. And having worked in mental health for years, I know there's a difference between somebody who attempts suicide taking pills and somebody who decides to shoot themselves. If you take pills, you can think about it, you can call 911, you can change your mind.
You're
if you have a gun,
correct.
there's no
It's
second
absolute.
thought.
No, you're absolutely
It's
correct.
absolute.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and I too have been in the mental health field for many years, too many children are committing suicide.
Yeah.
And it's been a problem that we've faced for many years, but it seems to be a growing problem.
Yeah.
So Moms has developed the Be Smart program, which it's a very simple to understand framework, SMART. Each of those stands for something that we need to remember to do to keep our children safe. So to start off, the S in SMART stands for secure. And we're asking that gun owners secure their weapons properly. They should be in locked safes. The ammunition should be stored separately from the gun, and it should also be locked. And securing guns is the single most important thing we can do to help kids survive. And you can never rely, ever rely on children to keep themselves safe. It just isn't going to happen. There's a scientific basis for this as well. The prefrontal cortex of the brain isn't fully developed until someone is 18 or 20 years old. And that's the executive part of the brain that helps us make good decisions and use good judgment. And so if we expect kids to do that, we're expecting something that physiologically and biologically and neurologically they're not ready to do. So we just can't do that.
And let me share a story about Jeremiah Davis.
Okay.
He was a typical 11-year-old kid, loved the Tigers, absolutely loved the Tigers. November of 2013, he was visiting his father. His parents were separated. And another boy there, who was 15 years old, the son of the girlfriend, had taken an unsecured weapon from another relative's house. And they were fiddling around with the gun went off, and Jeremiah was shot. 2 days later, he died with his mom by his side.
It's tragic.
Yeah.
So once again, you can't count on curious kids to not find a gun. A Harvard study, and this absolutely I find astounding. A Harvard study found that within gun-owning families, 70% of the kids in those families knew where the gun was.
That reminds me of an interesting story. My dad had a pocket watch, and he didn't want me to handle it. And I was a young child, and he hid it. And one day I went looking for it. I went throughout the whole house, and I found it. And I took that pocket watch out, and I started to take it apart. I wanted to see how it worked. My dad came in the room, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I just wanted to see how it works." And he said, "I thought I hid that where you couldn't find it." The little mind didn't stop until it found it. And the same thing holds if you're fascinated with a gun.
You are absolutely right. And to make a point, you found it, and you took it apart.
I went through the whole house.
Of those 70% of the kids that know where the gun is hidden, 36% of those children have handled that gun without their parents being present.
Wow.
So that is pretty frightening if you're a parent. In addition to securing guns, now we want to go to the M in SMART, which is to model safety behavior, model good gun safety behavior. So your kids need to do not what you say, but what they see that you do. And
I think one thing we need to bring in here is that every law-abiding citizen has the right to decide whether or not they have a gun in the home.
Sure.
Okay? We don't argue with that.
It's a Second Amendment issue.
That is, okay. But part of that decision really requires, I believe, you to ask yourself some questions. And some of the questions that the National Shooting Sports Foundation came up with were, do I need a gun? If I have a gun, how will I secure it? Do my family members want a gun in the house? Do I have small children? And there are several other questions that we need to ask before we go out and purchase that gun.
You know, that's an interesting thing. I visited many countries throughout my lifetime, and there are some countries where people don't own guns, but they hunt. When they go hunting someplace, the place they hunt provides a gun. So, and they provide some training, and then they can hunt on the property, and when the people leave, they leave the gun there and they go back to their city or whatever, because they don't need a gun in the city to hunt. And it's actually cheaper in the long run because guns are very expensive.
They are.
And so, I mean, I'm just thinking of how other people deal with this. And maybe that's why they are 11 times less at risk. I don't know.
You're right. It's very smart. Even in the military, guns are issued for specific purposes during the day. And then when they're done with the range or whatever they're shooting that day, those guns are locked up again. So even soldiers don't walk up around with sidearms on them all
In
the
Switzerland,
time.
everybody is in the military. Everybody has a gun. They're issued a gun. They're trained, however, how to use a gun, and they are instructed on how to store the gun. They can't carry them around wherever they want, but when they're called out, they bring their guns with them.
Absolutely.
And so, but they go through extensive training. And I have a friend who's a doctor there, and I said, "You're in the military?" And I said, "Yeah." "Do you have a gun?" "Yeah." And he says, "Do you use it?" He says, "Oh, I go out and train, twice a year. I'm very proficient at it." And I says, "Where do you store it?" And he said, "I have it stored in a safe back at my house with other guns and ammunition." He says, but I use it when I need to use it.
And he trains.
Right, he trains.
Which is something that's
Yeah.
very, very important.
He's very conscious, yeah.
And I think one thing we really need to stress is that Moms Demand Action is about gun sense. In no way are we saying that we want America to become a country where we ban guns.
Sure.
I
don't think that would be possible anyways.
No,
Yeah.
it probably wouldn't be. And I don't have issue with people that have guns. I'm a person with a gun.
Yeah.
I do have issue with people not being properly trained
Yes.
and people not being responsible gun owners.
Yeah.
And our quest is get the training, be a responsible gun owner.
Okay. So we've got about 10 more minutes to kind of capture your message here, so I want to let you go ahead.
So, in addition, for the M in Be Smart, it's important to always keep your guns pointed in a safe direction. Treat every firearm as if it's loaded. Be sure of what your target is and what's beyond it, which is very important. If you miss, what's behind the target? Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire, and then don't ever rely on your gun safety.
Yeah.
The safety on the gun.
Yeah.
Just
They don't always
don't use
work.
that as a backup. No, they don't. And then the A in Be Smart is to ask about the presence of unsecured guns in other homes. You may not have a gun in your home, but your children may go to other homes where there are guns. So try to make it a part of your general safety conversation, which may be difficult at first,
Yeah.
but it's important. So I'm going to have a conversation with Bob as another parent of a young child.
Okay. I'd like to make one
Sure.
little point on this before we start that, because it's a shocking statistic to me that 1.7 million children live in homes where guns are both loaded and unlocked.
Wow.
And, you know, even if you practice responsible storage,
Yeah.
the reality is that you can't be sure of other people's homes.
Wow.
Children go to other people's homes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even for someone like you who has your guns
Yeah.
locked up and everything, that doesn't mean that your child would not visit another home where the guns are not stored properly
Yeah.
or are loaded. So it's a shocking statistic.
Yeah.
Say I have a 5-year-old and you have a young child and they have a play date.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you questions that probably every parent would ask. You know,
Okay.
do you have a cat? Because my child's allergic to
Okay.
cats. Do you have a swimming pool? Because my child doesn't swim.
Mm-hmm.
And the last question that is so difficult to ask is, do you have any guns in your house?
I do.
You do.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how you store them?
In a safe with a
Thumbprint
identification.
Excellent. And how about the ammunition? How
Stored
is that
separately, locked away.
Excellent.
Not in the same place.
Now, I've asked all of those same questions to Bob, who is the father of another child, and I'm going to get to the final question is, Bob, do you have any guns in your house?
Yes.
You do. Do you mind if I ask how you store them?
I store my weapon in the nightstand next to my bed.
Is it locked?
Well, no, it's there for protection. I could be killed by the time I unlock that drawer.
I understand that, and I respect you. That is your decision to make as a parent. However, my child is not always the model of perfect behavior. He gets into things, and I don't necessarily trust him. So could we have that play date at the park downtown, and we just meet there with the kids?
Sure, that sounds good.
Excellent. And if it rains, how about we have it at my house?
Sure.
Okay, great. So that's how that conversation
I got it.
might
yeah.
go.
I got it.
And it's also important if you have a teenager who is babysitting, your teenager needs to ask that question
Yeah.
because the teenager doesn't want to become a victim of the child she's babysitting being shot.
And you know, guns have a certain attraction. You want to squeeze that
Yes, you do.
trigger.
Yes, you do.
And I mean, just there's something about it.
Yes,
Doesn't make
you
a
do.
difference who it is.
Yep.
Go to a.
Yep.
People want to pull that trigger.
Yep. So I think,
That's
Bob,
true.
you
Well,
want to share one
That's
more
true, and
story,
I think going
don't you?
along with that is the, I know when I grew up, I got a plastic gun,
Yeah.
okay, or I got my Roy Rogers holster. But what it does is it's that natural curiosity. I'm playing with it.
Yeah.
If I see a real one,
Yeah.
it still looks like a toy to me.
Yeah.
We talked about, you had mentioned the high suicide rate.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mikey Graham, who was a friendly 8th grader, excellent bowler, avid athlete, loved his parents. In January 2013, he came home got one of his father's guns that was loaded and unsecured and committed suicide.
Yeah.
And we have to think about if that gun had been secured, would the same thing have happened? And his parents, though, and when we talk about the warning signs, said they were so shocked. He was such a happy child, and that they don't believe that he meant to kill himself that day.
They'll
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
They'll never know. But it is important. And now we're at another point where we talk about research shows that in many, many cases, especially with teenagers, that suicide is an impulsive act.
Sure.
And they're unlikely to try it a second time.
Yeah.
And adolescence is an emotional time for everyone, and kids are always very emotional. One psychiatrist, Dr. David Brent, says that the availability of a gun is more important than any underlying psychiatric disorder.
It's one of the questions I ask to press people is, do you own a gun?
Yep.
And where is it?
That's right. So the method does matter. Guns are effective 85% of the time. They are the single most lethal and successful method to commit suicide. Whereas by comparison, suicide attempts by suffocation are effective 60% of the time. And suicide attempts involving overdoses of drugs are only successful about 2% of the time.
Yeah.
So, you want to review here for us, Bob?
Well, the R in SMART means the presence of unsecured gun itself and a risk factor for teen suicide. And the message that we want to give out to parents is to be looking for some behaviors. Things like a personality change,
Yeah.
agitation, withdrawal, poor self-care,
Yeah.
talking about killing themselves, other changes in behavior where they go from being very, very quiet and withdrawn to being euphoric.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say something. We're all conscious of making sure those pill caps have the special lock on them.
Yep.
And the pharmacies give those to us because
Yes.
we don't want our kids to get into those
Correct.
things. And, that's become something that has reduced the risk of unintentional
Yes.
overdose. The same thing holds true with guns. I suppose if
It
we
does.
secure guns, we're going to reduce the chances of all these bad risks.
Yep.
It takes care of a lot of the risk. I think we still have to pay attention to the behaviors
Yeah.
because there are other ways, of course, for children to end their lives.
Run us through the SMART again, would you, Bob?
S,
S is for,
secure all guns in your home and vehicles.
M is for,
Responsible behavior around guns.
A is for,
About the presence of guns in other homes and if they are secured.
R is for,
Recognize the risk factors for teen suicide.
T is for.
Tell your friends, adult children, relatives, and neighbors to be smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our message.
Yeah, and I think this is really important to understand because I think the emotions sometimes of people fearing that somebody's going to take away their guns gets in the way of good common sense, which is, all right, if you do have a firearm and it is a lethal weapon, I mean, no matter what you say about it, you were a sportsman, I was a sportsman, you did some trap shooting, I did some, you're probably a lot better than me based on what you're talking about.
He was pretty good.
Yeah. So there is a sport element to it, but it can kill somebody.
Yes.
It's true.
And it can do a lot of damage if you're not careful with it. So we really have to treat it with a lot of respect, and not cavalier about it as if it's some badge of courage or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, if you're interested in being a volunteer with moms, you can become a Be Smart presenter and you can go out and spread the word. We've had a number of groups ask us to come and talk to them.
Yeah.
And we talk to groups of all ages, young parents, grandparents, sportsmen, gun owners. And you can get more information about the Be Smart program if you simply go to the mom's website.
So you go to
www.momsdemandaction.org.
Okay. And are you two available also to share the information with other people?
We
Absolutely.
Okay.
We are.
So they can contact you through this group, and you would be willing to make presentations?
Absolutely.
That's
Share.
what we're here for.
Yeah. And this is valuable because I think we need to have an intelligent adult dialogue about this and bring this into a place where people aren't thinking the worst of how to deal with this. We can manage this. You know, there's a very interesting statistic, and this is a separate thing. In Australia some years ago, they decided they were going to do something different about their
1996.
Yeah, and one of the things they did, and I know this is a controversial thing here, is they just removed one gun, the semi-automatic gun, from the marketplace, and basically put it in a special category. And since then, they haven't had any mass shootings.
Yep.
You know, because that gun's not available, and so it does show that sensible laws about how to handle certain guns can lead to a diminishment in risks.
Absolutely.
And I think what you're saying is you can take it a step further by just giving everybody a chance to do a better job with what they have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And many people have more than one gun, which makes it even...
They do, and we need to, if we want to educate people, we need to stop being on sides.
Yeah.
The I love guns and the I hate guns. And that's what we try to do with Be Smart. Whether you like guns and you like to carry them, or whether we don't, we want everyone to know how they can be safer in the presence of guns.
Well, I think we're all interested in one thing: less violence.
Absolutely.
And if we could just agree on this in some way, work together, find some mutual ground, then I think we would be safer. Yeah. And I think we would see less violence. And the fact that we're 11 times more likely to experience violence than other places in the world shows that we could improve.
Yeah, we have
There's
a
room
problem.
for improvement.
We have a problem.
Well, this is a very valuable presentation, and I want to thank both of you for taking the time and also stepping out, because this is the other thing I think that many gun owners have to do. The responsible gun owners have to step out and talk to other gun owners about how this is a responsibility, and that we all share in making sure that it doesn't turn into something that's, like many of your stories, a sad ending for somebody.
Absolutely agree with you.
Okay. Well, thank you all for paying attention or listening to this. If you disagree, please send your comments. If you think that this is useful, please contact these people or get involved in this group. And if you want to dialogue more about this, contact MCTV, and we'll be more than happy to have more discussion about this. So once again, I thank you all for taking the time to listen to this very important message. And I think as brought out here today, we all need to be a little safer in everything we do, especially if you're a gun owner. Thank you.